Okay, we are live on YouTube. Good evening, everybody. If you haven't already, if you're just joining us, please make sure you shut your videos off now. And don't be offended if your video accidentally comes back on later and I shut it off myself. So helps things go a little bit smoother when we can only see the videos of the presenters. I'm going to turn my own video off here in a minute, actually. As I said just a second ago, this session is live and being recorded. Welcome to the fourth installment of Kentucky Fish and Wildlife's Spring Turkey Field to Fork webinar series for 2021. Remember, this information that we have is geared towards the absolute beginner. So don't feel self-conscious if you have never been turkey hunting before, like myself, or never called a turkey, or don't have a clue what equipment that you need for turkey hunting. This is exactly where you need to be. If you're the absolute beginner, this is the right place. If you're just joining us on Zoom, make sure you please put your name and where you're from in the chat, and that's going to help us later on almost as much as the survey that we're going to send you tomorrow. If you could fill that out, that helps us even more. So I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. Make sure you keep your cameras off, keep your microphones muted unless we ask you to come back on. Excuse me. Let's see. I am Brent McCarty. I'm an R3 specialist for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I have the pleasure of introducing our two presenters today. We're going to talk about turkey hunting equipment, everything you need to be out in the field turkey hunting. I'm really looking forward to this because I think we're going to have a good time, right, Becky and Kenton? So without further ado, Becky Wallen and Kenton Bottoms. Becky, why don't you introduce yourself first?
All right, thanks, Brent. So my name is Becky Wallen. I'm the Field to Fork coordinator for the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. If you've been following along with our webinar series, I've been the host, but tonight I get to have a little bit more fun, and I'm joined by Kenton Bottoms. He's going to be we're both going to be talking about turkey hunting equipment. So we'll be doing a lot of show and tell and mixing it up a little bit. And I have been turkey hunting for not as long as Kenton has. He's going to tell you a little bit about his background, but I can tell you it's something that I thoroughly enjoy. Being out in the woods in the spring, there's really nothing like it. When it starts getting pretty out, we're really revving to get outside anyway. And there's no better way to spend your mornings and your afternoons and your weekends than in the turkey woods. Let me tell you, it is just a blast. It's a lot of action, which is a little bit different from deer hunting. I grew up deer hunting. I didn't get into turkey hunting until I was in college in my undergrad. But once I started, man, I just look forward to it every year. And so that's a little bit about my background. I'm going to let Kenton introduce himself.
Hello. Hey, everybody. My name is Kenton Bottoms. I'm a volunteer. I've helped out Becky before. And so I guess I'll talk a little bit about my background. I didn't grow up in a traditional like hunting family. And so for me to get into hunting, it was just like on my own will. Like I always wanted to go and stuff. So I pursued it and read a lot of books. I don't think they had things like this back then. So I didn't get to, watch webinars and things. So I had to read a lot of books, and I learned through a lot of trial and error. But I've been turkey hunting for probably 15 or 16 years. And which I'm not gonna lie to you, it took me a while before I was able to be successful and finally take a turkey. But once I did, I figured it out. Like I said, I had to learn a lot of trial and error, and got it figured out. And so now I'm a fairly successful turkey hunter. I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm like, some kind of superstar or anything like that. But I mean, I'm fairly successful and fairly confident in turkey hunting. So that's a little bit about me. So I guess we will go ahead and dive into.
Sorry, Kenton, I couldn't get myself off mute quick enough there.
Okay,
Sorry
I didn't know.
about
I didn't know.
that. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
So yeah, good job. Thank you both for introducing yourselves. And yes, Kenton, you are going to have the first section today. So I've left you spotlighted here, folks. As we go, if you have questions for Kenton or Becky, questions in general, drop them in the chat. We will have time for question and answer at the end of the presentation today. So drop them in the chat. I'll keep track of them. I've got a little notepad over here ready to go to write down your questions. So drop them in the chat if you got questions. But yeah, Kenton, take it away.
Okay. So one of the first things we're going to talk about with turkey hunting equipment is going to be firearms. So as you may or may not know, you can use a shotgun, which you're not allowed to use a rifle, but you can use a shotgun to legally harvest turkeys, or or archer equipment, a bow, longbow, recurve, compound, crossbow, any of those things. But so first off, I'm going to talk about shotguns, and kind of what you need and what will help you be more successful, and like just some little things that I've learned, and that hopefully will help you out. So the first thing is the shotgun gauge, which is basically it's the size of the shell or the projectile, like the diameter of the projectile that you will shoot out of your shotgun. So in turkey hunting nowadays, you'll more commonly hear of probably 2 or 3 different gauges. So you'll hear of a 12 gauge, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, are very familiar with. I mean, that's kind of like your standard. When you think shotgun, you think of a 12 gauge. It's one of those things that probably everybody's heard of. And then you'll also hear 20 gauge a lot, which is a slightly smaller diameter, and there also happen to be different color, but a slightly smaller diameter. So you'll hear that one a lot. And then here recently, there's been a surge in people turkey hunting with the 410 bore, which is technically not a gauge. I mean, I guess if you were to simplify it to a gauge, it would be like a 67 or 68 gauge, but they call it a 410 bore because that's the diameter bore. But anyway, so those are going to be your common shotgun gauges or sizes of shotguns that you'll hear people commonly take out and turkey hunt with, which I'd say probably the 12 gauge is the most popular. I mean, it's probably one of the most popular, shotguns that anybody has. So, so those are what you'll probably hear the most. And like I said, so the 12 gauge is the biggest, the 410 is the smallest, and the 20 gauge is right there in the middle. So one thing when you're turkey hunting that you always want to make sure is you always want to make sure that you have your shotgun plugged. If you don't have like a break action or a single action, if you have like a pump action shotgun, or you have a semi-automatic shotgun, you always want to make sure you have your plug in. And your plug is just usually it's a plastic piece, and it goes down in your magazine tube. And what it does is it restricts your gun from holding more than 2 shells in the magazine. So, because legally you're allowed to have 3 shells in the gun, which is normally 2 in the magazine and 1 in the chamber. So that's what you're allowed to legally hunt with. It's very important to make sure you have your plug, because you can get in a lot of trouble for not having that stuff. So, it's a super simple thing, easy to check. You can take and, take some shells and load them in there to make sure you can't fit more than the max that you're allowed. And if you, for some reason, get a shotgun, like say if you buy one secondhand, or somebody gives you one and it doesn't have a plug, plugs are pretty easy to find. Local stores like, Cabela's probably sells them, Sportsman's Warehouse, places like that online. A lot of times you can contact the manufacturer of whoever made the firearm, and they could probably provide you with a plug. But a plug's very important. It's something you definitely want to have. So from that, then I guess we will talk about different shot sizes. So your shot size it lets you know how big the projectiles that you're actually shooting out of your shotgun are going to be. So with turkey hunting, you want to have a decent shot size. Like you want to have a pretty big shot size. So in Kentucky, like there's like a happy medium. Like you want to have a shot size that's big enough to effectively take a turkey, but you also don't want to have one that's too big, because then you get into danger issues with, you know, other people in the woods and things like that. So for Kentucky, the maximum shot size, like the biggest shot size you can use, is 4-shot. But you can use from 4-shot on up. And so the way shot size works is like 4s are a bigger shot size than 5s. And then, like, you know, so it's kind of backwards from the way that you would think about it. But so keep in mind that, you know, 4 shots, the biggest shot size you can shoot legally at a turkey in Kentucky. And from my experience, most people will probably settle on something like a 5-shot. 5-shot usually patterns out of a shotgun a little bit better, which I'll talk about what patterning is actually right now, I guess. So
just to make sure I'm clear on this, Kenton.
Yeah.
So the larger the number of shot, the smaller the shot actually is.
Yeah.
Okay.
The larger the number of the, like if it's 10-shot, is smaller than 1-shot. 1-shot's really big, 10-shot's really small. So
thank you, Kenton. Thank you for clarifying.
And let's see. So, you know, like I said, 4-shot's the biggest size that you can shoot in Kentucky. Most people will, like I said, most people I know, if they're shooting, well, now that's another thing too. So most people will probably shoot lead shot, which that means the projectiles that they're shooting are going to be made out of lead. But now there's a new thing that came out, I don't know, it's been out a little while, but it's fairly new still, and it's called tungsten super shot, or TSS for short. I'm sure you'll hear of it, or you may have already heard of it. But what that tungsten super shot is it's actually a non-toxic projectile, but it is denser, so it's heavier than lead. So what that means is you can drop your shot size or go up in shot size, but still have the same density as a lower shot size lead shot. So I think it's like a 9-shot TSS is the same density as a 5-shot lead, or 4 or 5-shot lead. So you really gain an advantage there with pellet count, or like the number of projectiles and things like that. But so earlier I mentioned pattern, like the way your shotgun patterns. And so basically what a pattern is it's what the way the arrangement that the projectiles come out of your shotgun and how they relate, how they hit on the target. So that's going to be your pattern. And so for turkey hunting, you're going to want a tighter pattern, because it's not like if you were to be hunting something like doves or ducks or something like that, where you have to shoot something that's flying. Usually turkeys, when you're shooting at a turkey, they're walking in, they're on the ground, they're fairly still. I mean, they never really stop moving, but they're fairly still. So you want to really be precise. So what you want to do is you'll want to find an appropriate, which I can get it out of here, but an appropriate choke to get the right pattern so that you can be effective. And so what a choke does is the way I like to think of it is, it's like if you had a water hose and you just let it go, and you're just letting that water hose dump the water out. It doesn't shoot very far. It's not, it's just kind of going wherever it wants to go. But when you choke it down and put your thumb over it, then you can get really precise, and you can shoot a smaller stream, and you can aim that exactly where you want. So that's kind of the way a shotgun choke works, is it constricts the shot as it comes out of the barrel and keeps it to where it's in a tighter pattern. So you end up with more of your pellets in the area that you aimed at, which is on a turkey, you're going to want to aim somewhere in the neck area, neck to head area. So I mean, it concentrates your pellets so that you can be more effective. And also that has a lot to do with your range as to how far away you can effectively harvest a turkey. The more open your pattern is, the less yardage you're going to want between you and the turkey when you go to shoot at it, because you know you want as many pellets to hit the turkey in a vital area as you can. So, and I've got a couple of different patterns here. Like, so this one is from a 410 shotgun, which is very, very small. It's shoots these little things, which are tiny. But it was loaded with number 9 TSS, which is that tungsten super shot. So even though it's got those really small pellets, they are very dense. And so like this would have killed the turkey. I mean, it's, you know, it would have been a decent shot. Now this is from 40 yards, so it's like I do have a fairly tight choke in, because normally it'll spread way more than that at that distance. But let's see. One second. Okay. So here is, you know, I've got a pattern. Now this is from a 20 gauge, and you can see how many pellets and hits there are on this one. And this is from 30 yards with a 20 gauge with number 7 and number 9 TSS. So you can tell, once again, a fairly tight choke, so that my pattern, the bulk of my pattern is on the actual turkey, which is going to lead it to me having a better success at harvesting the turkey cleanly and humanely, because I have a lot of my patterns choked down, so I got a lot of hits right where I need them. So that's a very important thing to think about. And so what you want to do is, and this is the hard part, because sometimes it takes a little trial and error, but sometimes you'll go through several choke tubes, which are what constricts your shot down, to find one that works with your gun and the ammo that you're wanting to shoot. Because I mean, you know, nowadays it's like, it's not so much what you want to shoot, it's what you can get a hold of. And I mean, there's a lot of different shots that you can harvest a turkey with, but you just really want to make sure you take the time to, and you don't have to have a fancy turkey target like that. You can take a sheet of poster board and put a dot on it, aim at that dot, and then kind of take what standard is a 10-inch circle, or like a pie plate. And you can take that and that'll kind of give you an idea of like where you're hitting, where your pattern is hitting, and like, you know, what kind of pattern density you have. Because like you know, like I said, you know, you want as many pellets in the area where you're aiming as possible. And so with that being said, I mean, a lot of people think, you know, well, I'm shooting a gun, so I mean, I could probably shoot a turkey from forever away or something like that. Well, that's not necessarily true, due to the way that shotguns work and the patterns and how they spread out as you know, as the distance gets further from the barrel where they're fired. So I would say, you know, the average shot on a turkey is somewhere between 15 and 30 yards, somewhere in there. And I, you know, personally, I probably don't see a need for trying to shoot at a turkey any further than 30 yards. Which, I mean, I'm sure it happens, and there's people that do. But for me, that's just where I feel comfortable, and I know I got a lot of hits in the area that I need them. I know what my pattern's doing, but I wouldn't know that if I didn't pattern my shotgun. So, and another thing, which is away from patterning, but just turkey hunting equipment in general, is a sling. So a sling that goes on your shotgun. These things, my goodness, so valuable, because, you know, you don't always want to just have your shotgun in your hands, or, you know, sometimes turkey hunting, you have to walk a whole lot. And so it's very nice to be able to have that. You can sling it over your shoulder. It's still safe. It keeps the muzzle in a safe direction. It's, you know, it's a safe way to carry the gun, and your hands free. So maybe you're wanting to call, you're running a POC style call or something like that, and you can do that and still have your gun right there, easy access. But you're not having to lug it around or fiddle around with carrying it around and stuff. But that's something that I like to use a lot. I utilize a sling all the time. It's, you know, it's one of those things that stays on my shotgun because I like slings. They're handy to me. Let's see. So my shotgun that I have here, this is my 20 gauge. This is my primary gun that I turkey hunt with. And you'll notice it has a weird thing on the top, which is a rail, and it has a red dot sight on top, is what I have on my turkey gun. And so that red dot sight allows me to be able to adjust my aiming point to wherever the densest part of my pattern is. So instead of having, having to use like Kentucky windage, which is basically knowing like, well, my gun shoots 3 inches to the left and 2 inches down and trying to figure out where to hold on the turkey. This lets it be where I can adjust that red dot to be exactly where the pattern is. So I know if I put the dot on the turkey, the bulk of my pattern is going to hit right there. And so, red dots are pretty pricey, pretty expensive. It's not easy to mount one on every gun. So, I mean, there's other ways you can get around that. There are a lot of companies that sell like a rifle style sight. So it'll be like 2 dots in the back and one in the front that'll be adjustable. And then that way you can still get some adjustment and kind of make your pattern, which, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that every gun's going to not shoot exactly where you're aiming down the bead, but sometimes you will have issues with stuff like that. So, there's a couple ways to get around it. One is like having a red dot sight or a aftermarket set of adjustable sights, which they make them to fit just about any shotgun. I mean, I think you can, mount them on just about anything. But that's something helpful. Most of the time that's not needed. And, honestly, every turkey I've ever killed, this is the first year I've ever had a red dot. So I just wanted to try it. I wanted to try something new. But every turkey I've ever killed, I killed just aiming down the bead, shooting it the way that it came from the factory. It's, you don't need to spend more money. And another thing, you don't have to have a camouflage gun either. You're just fine with a black gun, like one that's like Parkerized black or like even blued or something like that. Now this one's a little shiny and I don't really love that, but I mean, it'll still work. You can still kill turkeys with this. You're just going to have to be a little more steel so they don't pick you out. But I mean, you don't have to spend the extra money to get something camouflaged. That's not necessary. It's not necessary. You just don't have to do it. But I mean, it is nice. It's a nice touch. I mean, if you have the extra funds or, you want to do that. Also, another thing you could do, which is what I did to this one, is I actually painted this gun myself. It was black, and then I just painted it camo with some spray paint. It's not going to last forever. It's not going to be the prettiest paint job, but it is flat. It doesn't shine in the light or anything like that. And so it was just something I was like, well, I want to try it. The gun wasn't too expensive, so I gave it a shot. But I mean, those are pretty much the basics of like a turkey shotgun, and things you need to do to get prepared with your shotgun. So remember, you can't shoot anything larger than 4 shots. Another thing, so in a 12 gauge and 20 gauge, they make a 2 3/4 inch shell, which is smaller. It's a shorter shell, and then they make a 3 inch in 20 and 12 gauge, and which these are both 3 inch shells. That's a 20 gauge and a 12 gauge 3 inch shells. So these are more of what they would most of the time call them magnum shells. And so what they're going to usually have a little more payload, maybe a little more velocity, and so that's just going to add to your pellets on target, which is the ultimate goal, is to have as many pellets in the area that you're aiming so that you can effectively harvest the turkey. And then in the 12 gauge, they also have a 3.5 inch, which you can see the size difference between a 3 inch and a 3.5 inch 12 gauge. It's quite a bit bigger. And what that's going to do is, like I said, maximize your pellet count. So the 3.5 inch shell is going to be able to hold more pellets than the 3 inch is going to be able to hold more pellets than the 2 3/4 inch shell. So usually you're better off going with a magnum shell. So you're going to want to use a 3 inch or a 3.5, but you got to be careful because not every 12 gauge shotgun is capable of handling 3.5 inch shells. And there are some older guns that can't handle 3 inch shells. So it's always very important that you take your gun, and on just about every gun, which you're not going to be able to see it on this one, which is, I'm sorry, but on the barrel, they'll have a barrel stamp, usually on the right side toward the rear of the barrel, and it'll usually tell you what size shells that you can shoot out of that gun, because you don't want to shoot the wrong size shells for the gun, because they can end up making the gun dangerous and not safe to shoot. I mean, you could end up getting injured. So that's a very important thing. Before you buy any ammo for the shotgun you have, make sure you check your shotgun and see what type of shells you are able to shoot out of that shotgun. And another thing with chokes, not all shotguns have interchangeable chokes either. So like these, a lot of your modern guns will have a screw-in chokes where you can unscrew them and screw different ones in. And but a thing to be aware of there is making sure that if you do have a gun with screw chokes, you buy the correct choke for your gun. So not every 20 gauge choke fits every 20 gauge gun. They have different thread patterns. Just like, I mean, think of it like different bolts. Like they just have different thread pitches on them and things, and different technologies there. So a good thing that I've used to figure out which chokes I can use in my gun is if you go to choketube.com, which is Carlson's Choke Tube's web page, and they have a choke tube finder where you can go on there and you can look up what brand and model gun you have, and it'll tell you exactly what thread pattern choke tube you need for your gun. And one more thing about choke tubes is most companies will sell a choke tube that is branded as a turkey choke tube. Now, one company may have 4 or 5 different turkey choke tubes, but so the difference in those will be the diameter. So the choke, it'll be how tight the choke is or how much constriction it is putting on the shot from the normal diameter of the barrel. And that stuff gets a little more technical, but I mean, for just starting out, I would just get a turkey choke tube or even just a full choke tube, and just find you some Magnum shotgun shells, size 4 or up. Which I wouldn't personally, if you're not shooting TSS, I don't like to shoot over a 6-shot. So from 4-shot to 6-shot is what I'll shoot in lead, which that's what I shoot 5-shot in lead. Every lead turkey load that I have is going to be a 5-shot. But then if you are find the TSS shot, then you can go down in shot size, or up in shot size, so you can shoot a smaller shot size. So in TSS, I shoot anywhere from 7-shot to 9-shot, but I wouldn't shoot 7-shot or 9-shot lead at turkeys, just because you're not going to have the density to deliver to the turkey when you hit it with the shot, to be able to ethically kill it at distances past probably 20-30 yards, or probably not even 30 yards, probably 20 yards. So I like to stick with, if you're shooting lead, I would go from anywhere from 4-shot to 6-shot. And then if you can find some tungsten super shot or TSS shells, you can go from anywhere from 7 to 9-shot is what is the most widely available. So, I mean, those are just, some of the things to consider when you're talking about firearms for hunting turkeys.
Awesome. Thanks, Kenton. I am going to take over for a second and talk about archery equipment. And I just want to lead with that archery hunting for turkeys is a little bit more of an advanced level style of hunting for turkeys, but it is legal. So we wanted to talk about the equipment just a little bit. You got a couple different options for the archery equipment. You can use the longbows, a recurve bow, a compound bow, or a crossbow. And I have examples of each one, except the longbow. But let me grab these real quick. So the first one I'll show you is the recurve. And the reason it's called a recurve is you can tell right away the limbs are curved. on both ends. Now, if this was strung, the string would run right down the back here, and you'd hold it like so. Let me back up just a little bit more. You can see a little bit better. So that's our recurve. These are legal to use for hunting turkeys in Kentucky. You've also got the compound bow. Now, right away, you can see that the limbs are a little bit shorter, and that's because you have the mechanical advantage of the cam system, and the limbs are more stiff as well. This one is not dressed up. It doesn't have a sight or anything. You might, your archery equipment, you would tailor to you and your style, but this is just a bare bow, bare compound bow, and you could use it for turkey hunting. Now, with the bows and the crossbows, there's no minimum draw weight, but with the crossbows, here we've got a crossbow you could use. They do have to be legal, a working safety device. So on this one, let me get close up here so that you can see. Here's our safety device. You'll notice that it shows you, if when it's on, it's in the backwards position. It is not technically on at this point because for this bow, you have to have it in the forward position to cock the arrow, to cock the string so that you can load the arrow, and it automatically puts it in the safety. So each one is different. Not all of them are that way, but this is just a crossbow example, something you could use out in the turkey woods. Now, let me grab my chair. When you're using archery equipment, you're going to be using the tip on your arrow called a broadhead. So this is a broadhead. There's multiple different kinds of broadheads. This one is a fixed blade. So each one of these ridges is a razor blade, basically. And this one is fixed. So these don't move. They don't change position. You can't remove them. You have to take the whole broadhead off. There are a couple other ones. There's removables so that each blade you can replace. And then there are mechanicals that are usually rubber banded towards the back here. And upon impact of the animal, the blades expand and it creates a wider cutting surface. To be legal in Kentucky, your broadheads must cut 7/8 of an inch. And don't worry about getting out a tape measure. When you buy your broadheads, it's going to tell you on the package what the cutting diameter is. So 7/8 of an inch for both broadheads that fit your lateral bows, your long bows, your recurves, and your compounds, and the crossbows, all the same, okay? Now, something to note, there are lots of options for your broadheads. And if you are a deer hunter or you're a target shooter for archery and you switch to switch the broadhead or the tip on your arrow to turkey hunt, then you have to re-practice. You have to shoot your bow again, make sure that you're still hitting your target. Because anything that you change will change how your arrow flies. So make sure you get a target that you can shoot a broadhead into and practice if you make any adjustments at all. The farthest range for archery equipment is totally dependent on what you're comfortable with, which is what kind of Kenton was talking about a little bit earlier with the shotguns. But we do recommend for beginners a maximum range of 30 yards. And that's pretty far out there for archery equipment, even crossbows. It's a common misconception that a crossbow is an advantage over other bows as far as the distance that you can shoot. And but we say the same for both. 30 yards maximum for your archery equipment, especially for us, for the beginners out there. Shot placement with archery equipment, you're going to be aiming for the head and neck area just like you do with your firearms. It does require a little bit of practice and skill. Kenton already mentioned that turkeys don't sit around or sit still much at all. So it takes patience and skill, and that's why it's considered a more advanced level of turkey hunting. So that was very quick. But if you have questions, if you are really, really wanting to dive into archery hunting for turkeys, you can reach out to me after the webinar, or Brent can throw my email down in there. You probably already have it from registration, but it's becky.wallen@ky.gov. So we can talk more about archery hunting for turkeys, but that's about it. And if you have questions for tonight, throw them in the chat. And so now we're going to go back to Kenton. He's going to talk about some turkey decoys for us.
Yeah. So turkey hunting, a lot of times, a lot of people use decoys to help attract turkeys, to make them feel more comfortable, so they stick around longer, so that you can get that shot off. And sometimes it'll make them stay still long enough to where you have plenty of time to get a shot off and things like that. So one of the things I want to talk about is like, how many turkey decoys do you need? What kind of turkey decoys do you need? Do you even need turkey decoys? Well, all those things kind of depend on where you're hunting. So if for instance, say you hunt a field edge, or like where you're going to hunt has like a big field edge. So it's like like a tree row, and then like a big open field, or an ag field, or something like that, an agriculture field. You're probably definitely going to want to use decoys. They have a lot of drawing power, and I mean, turkeys are very curious. So they'll come check things out, and they like to keep tabs on each other. They're pretty social animals, which I think you all already went over, like turkey biology and things like that in a previous webinar. But
that's correct. But go ahead and expand all you need to, Kenton.
Oh, okay. All right. So, in the springtime, spring turkey hunting is during the turkey's mating season. So obviously the turkeys are walking around looking for mates. They're trying to find, other turkeys to mate with. And so during that time period, the male turkeys get aggressive, and they want to push other male turkeys away so they can have all the females to themselves. It's kind of like deer do when they get in the rut. They'll fight a lot and stuff like that. Well, male turkeys do the same thing. And so one of the easiest things to do, and one of your more basic things, is like just a hen decoy. And so this is a cheap foam decoy, and it's just made to look like a hen turkey, which you can see. I mean, you can see this looks like